Welcome to the 10-Minute Business Insight on MyNewsroom.ca. Joining me today is Alex Fallon, who's becoming a regular on this particular program. Alex is President and CEO of SERT, the Saskatoon Regional Economic Development Authority. And Alex, I brought you on because you've just released something called SERT, the Economic Recovery Tracker for Saskatoon. Perhaps you could explain, where it came from, why you're doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good to be back. SERT, yeah, the true story is I was out for a run one day after work, and I was thinking about that question that people seem to ask every day, which is, when's the economy going to recover? How's the economy doing? And just started thinking about how we could answer that question, and realized there wasn't anything out there that kind of measured how the economy was doing in terms of a recovery to before COVID time. So that's where the initial idea came from. So I'll blame running for that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you draw that observation because it's doubly true for a community. I mean, you can maybe get some national stuff or provincial stuff at best, Stats Canada, that kind of stuff, but they don't break it down, especially for mid-sized communities. So you've really personalized this, if I can use that word, for Saskatoon region.
Yeah, absolutely. This is totally focused on Saskatoon region economic indicators and how our economy is doing. Because, like you said, it's there's some national figures out there, but we've got a unique economy. Obviously, we've got the resource base, we've got tech, and I was looking at things like housing prices, and they seem to be increasing at a time when the economy was facing a lot of uncertainty and a bit of a downturn. So those type of things. One of the reasons why we wanted to focus in on the Saskatoon economy and measure things like retail sales, housing starts, unemployment, etc. Really trying to understand how's our economy doing in terms of getting back to where we were.
Before we get into just how it is performing, excuse me, I don't think any other community is doing this that I'm aware of. Do you know of any?
I don't think so. I haven't seen one yet. I did kind of, when I had the idea, you go away and Google it and see if it's already out there, and couldn't find it. So I haven't seen any others who are doing it. So hopefully we can say it's first of a kind. But yeah, we really like the model and what it shows.
Well, let's talk about what you found. You've got your first one is out. You've got your analyst team that have done kind of the number crunching. What did they find?
Yeah, well, the team did a great job. We looked at around 10 economic indicators. So those ones I mentioned, like retail sales, unemployment, but also some very specific ones like airport passengers and also hotel occupancy rates. So we took the usual economic indicators and added in some very local ones and across different sectors and different type of economic stats as well. So we got a very broad picture, and each of those are performing slightly different in terms of the recovery. And then we looked at, well, how do you weight these, right? Because obviously things like GDP and employment are important indicators compared to maybe some of the smaller ones in certain sectors. So we came up with a weighting scale, but long story short, you pull all that together, and what we got was a 48.2% recovery rate in terms of how our economy is performing today compared to at the very start of COVID. Somewhat surprising, somewhat not unsurprising, because I remember my old economics teacher, Mr. K. He always said, when some things go up, other things go down, and vice versa. So, some people might say, well, wow, my company's really struggling. How can it be 48%? And another company might say, well, actually, our business is busy. And so we've seen that some things are up, some things are down. So the 50-ish% at the moment means we're still recovering, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few months and in the new year, how retail sales go in Christmas and how that changes the figure over the coming months.
Well, I have to say that 48% number struck me as a bit low, but the flip side of that, to quote your economics prof or teacher, it means there's an awful lot of room to grow too, that we've still got a long ways of a lot of upside here.
Absolutely. It's a good point. We're going to, we've made progress. We're recovering. We are going to recover at some point. We don't know when, but we will. And you're right, Paul. I mean, people forget about this, that eventually we'll surpass where we were. The economy will continue to grow. So it's not just about recovery, it's about recovering and then progressing to continue to grow the economy. And we know that's going to happen. So you're right. It's a case of glass half empty, half full at the moment. But, we know we're making progress, which is the main thing. And we can back it up with stats. So this isn't Srita's numbers. It's not Srita's view. It's not my view. I wasn't sure what the numbers would be, but when we add it all together, these are the stats we get. And so we're very confident in it. And in fact, it was interesting. We had two, because it's been a long time since I did economics, and we had two independent economics professionals who have masters of economics kind of review the model. They provided some feedback and said, yeah, this is a solid model. The numbers are what they are. And the recovery rate is a good a measurement. So we're pleased to release it.
I've just brought some of these charts up, and I thought we should probably have a look at some of them and some of those indicators that you talked about as well. So you've got employment, and some of the people like you and I follow this stuff, things like a participation rate, which real people don't bother with, but they're kind of a part of the story. They're key ingredients to telling this whole story. Maybe just talk about a couple of them. Construction seems to be one that's frustrating right now. Certainly those in the industry wish things were a little bit busier.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was important to us that we included multiple indicators across some of those sectors you mentioned, Paul, because obviously you could just look at GDP or you could just look at unemployment and use that. But the unique thing about this tracker is it takes the average of so many different economic indicators to get that recovery rate. And, you can see some of them, the graphs are very similar. You see the drop off back in early March where COVID hit and the economy kind of shut down and we were all working from home and we weren't sure what was going to happen over the coming weeks and months. And some of them have started to pick up, manufacturing shipments, for example, and others are still very low, airport to passenger traffic, for example. That one actually is an interesting one because it wouldn't be a typical economic indicator, airport passenger, but it's such an important one because it speaks to how many people are coming into our economy and spending money here that otherwise wouldn't be here. So that's an important one in terms of economic recovery and just speaks to that whole tourist and hospitality sector. And again, we included hotel occupancy rate as well, which is very similar. One surprise and one was retail sales. If you look at that one in detail, it actually shows a pretty strong recovery. Yeah. And again, you speak to some businesses and they say, how can that be? My shop, my business is struggling. And that's to do with retail sales, including things like online purchases and also stats from some of those small independent businesses that are struggling to other large box stores who saw a rush when everyone was rushing out to buy food and toilet paper and whatever it was. So that one was surprising. And again, it's one of the reasons why we wanted to include a cross section of indicators, provide some weighting to them, and then take the average from that.
So how often are you going to update this? Mm-hmm. You'll be able to build a bit of a database that you can start to track before long.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's what we want to do. And it's tricky because some of the stats all come out at different times. So I think our plan will be, well, what we're going to do is update it as and when we can and when stats come out. So we'll kind of be live. And then probably every month give people an update. And then every quarter do a bit more of analysis in terms of why the number has changed, where is it going. But we really want to make it as live and real time as possible.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if other communities picked up on this because it's obviously very helpful. And one of the things that COVID has not stopped is the need for businesses to plan, and they're always looking for information to build strategies around and just data to input into the process. And at a time when there's so much uncertainty, people will be just all over these numbers. I'm thinking to say, here's something we can actually hang our hat on. So maybe, good on you guys for coming up with this.
Thanks. We, I think we've been trying to act like a business and act like entrepreneurs and look at what we've been doing and say, what else can we do? What can we come up with? How can we change the type of information and the work we do or change the way we present information? So you're right. I think this model, like you said, we tend to look at these numbers all the time, so we're familiar with it. But the important thing for us was developing a tool, this tracker that, my mom or your average person in the street could understand, like, okay, so 48%, I got you. It's making progress. We're almost halfway. And when the number changes to say 60, 65, they can see that progress, and hopefully it will help people's confidence because, we know consumer confidence is one of the most important economic indicators. And without that, you don't get that recovery. So we want to inform people so that they know where we're at and have confidence in the recovery.
Alex, thank you very much for this. I appreciate your insight. And again, nice work on this.
Thanks very much, Paul.